Moments ago, he referred to MAGA forces who are apparently marshaling at Red Lobster near you, ready to take over this country. Now, to underscore how deeply Joe Biden means all of this, tonight's address in Philadelphia is not being categorized as a campaign event ahead of the midterm elections, which is what it looks like. No. Instead, this speech has the full sponsorship of the White House. In other words, what Joe Biden is saying right now is the official position of the entire executive branch of the U.S. government. That would include the Justice Department, the various intel agencies, and the world's most powerful standing military. Think about that. Does it make you nervous? You don't have to be a Trump voter to see a speech like this as a turning point in American history. For hundreds of years, the U.S. has had a political system comprised of two competing parties. If you were to declare one of those parties criminal and illegitimate, what would you be left with? Well, you'd be left with a one-party state. And that is what Joe Biden is calling for tonight, a one-party state. It's shocking. You may have trouble believing it's even happening, and yet it is, live on television right now. And yet, and here's what we're here to tell you, believe it or not, there is an upside to this catastrophe. Even as you watch your beloved country take a turn you never imagined possible, there is reason for hope. American liberals may have obvious dictatorial ambitions. There's no question they do. Only would-be dictators fear free speech and an armed population. But just because liberals long for a one-party state doesn't mean they're going to get one. They won't. In the end, they don't have the skills to pull that off. Liberals are too incompetent to overthrow democracy. And that's obvious from history. Every successful authoritarian revolution has had two things in common: a coherent worldview and a competent military force. Lenin, for example, Lenin had the writings of Karl Marx to provide an ideological justification for his revolution, and he had the military genius of Leon Trotsky to pull it off. Together, these two things were enough to topple the czar and take control of the world's biggest country. For all his power, Joe Biden does not have these two things. Marx and Trotsky? No. Joe Biden has Taylor Lorenz and Mark Milley. Lorenz is the ideological anchor of the Biden White House. She's its muse, its Che Guevara. They are inspired by her revolutionary fervor. But Taylor Lorenz does not write weighty books. Twitter is her canvas. And having surveyed her oeuvre, we can tell you that Lorenz's main idea appears to be that anyone who doesn't wear an N95 mask in the shower is a racist. That's the sum total of her ideology. Now, there are probably several dozen people in Cambridge who agree with that, but it is hardly the basis of a popular movement. It's not Marxism, it's whining. So that's a problem for Biden. And then there's Mark Milley, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Milley is Joe Biden's Leon Trotsky, but without the brilliance or the cool mustache. Mark Milley is a buffoon. He couldn't even manage to successfully withdraw forces from a country that wanted them to leave. Mark Milley's only victories take place at lunch. Pizza is afraid of him. No one else is. So these are the people who are trying to bring us a one-party state. For the next several minutes, we'd like to show you the face of Joe Biden's revolution. It is heartening. The next time you feel afraid for the future of this country, the next time you think, these people actually want to hurt me, because obviously they do, remember who we're talking about here, and you'll feel better. Now, we're going to start tonight with Joe Biden's Minister of Information, a person called Karine Jean-Pierre. Karine Jean-Pierre may be the most self-discrediting spokesman in the history of revolutionary politics. She makes Baghdad Bob from the Saddam years look dignified. She's literally beyond belief. Here she was on Monday.
Somebody unvaccinated comes over on a plane. You say that's not okay. Somebody walks into Texas or Arizona unvaccinated. They're allowed to stay. Why?
But that's not how it works. Like, we actually, no.
I know that that's not what you guys want to happen, but that is what is happening.
But that's not, it's not like somebody walks over and that's not how.
Exactly what's happening. Thousands of people are walking in a day. Some of them turn themselves over. Some of them are caught. Tens of thousands a week are not. That is what is happening.
It's not like someone just walks over the border. Karine Jean-Pierre laughs at that idea and waves her hand. So there are two options to explain what's going on here. Either Karine Jean-Pierre doesn't have a television set and has no idea what's happening in America right now. That's entirely possible. Or, we think this is more likely, she has seen the tape but just doesn't recognize what it is. She cannot discern people just walking over the border when she sees pictures of people just walking over the border. That's possible. She is that stupid. Want another example? Well, here she is, apparently with total sincerity, assessing a recent speech by Governor Ron DeSantis of Florida.
And just last week, you had Governor Ron DeSantis suggested that Dr. Fauci should be physically assaulted. And former President Trump has done the same many, many times.
Whoa, she looks concerned, and frankly, so are we. Whatever you think of Ron DeSantis, if he's calling for Dr. Fauci to be physically assaulted, that cannot stand. That is bad. That's violence. But of course, the question is, and it's always the question with Karine Jean-Pierre, is did that actually happen? Thankfully, we have the tape. Here it is.
You have people like Fauci saying that his lockdowns didn't cause any permanent damage to any young kids. And I'm just sick of seeing him. I know he says he's going to retire. Someone needs to grab that little elf and chuck him across the Potomac.
There it is. Someone needs to grab that little elf and chuck him across the Potomac. Karine Jean-Pierre was horrified by this. Elf chucking? That's not even legal. Not since the early days of the Howard Stern show has this nation put up with elf chucking. And by the way, who is Ron DeSantis that he can physically throw a federal employee all the way across the Potomac River, which is very wide in parts? And Karine Jean-Pierre knows that because she lives there. What is he, Hercules or something? This man is dangerous. Chucking an elf across the Potomac? And not only that, DeSantis just outed Tony Fauci as an elf. Elf, that's the word he used. Not an approved word. That's a threat to national security. It is indeed disinformation, probably Russian. Everyone knows that Tony Fauci is very tall. That's science. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is Karine Jean-Pierre. So of all the jobs you could hire Karine Jean-Pierre for, professional hand waver would be probably the first. If you need someone to wave a hand and look confused, she's at the top of your list. But if you need someone who can speak English in a fluent way and communicate ideas that the rest of us are able to understand, she might be at the very bottom of your list. But they hired her anyway. And the result is amazing. And as we said earlier, heartening. These are the leaders of the revolution. Today, for example, Karine Jean-Pierre defined the term extremist for us. You never hear that ever defined. But she defined it today from the podium. An extremist is anyone whose views differ from, we're quoting, the majority of Americans. So if your views are different from the majority, you're an extremist. So here's the best part. Karine Jean-Pierre works for a guy who's got a 38% approval rating. So the question before the class today is 38% less or more than the majority. Math is not Karine Jean-Pierre's strong suit. And of course, it's not her boss's strong suit either. Cognition is not his strong suit. This is the man who took orders from men in Easter Bunny costumes. This is the man who chose as his vice president someone who feels the need to say mankind and womankind as if they're completely separate categories. Watch this.
The Artemis program is the beginning of the next era of what we have a history and a tradition of doing, of providing vision and inspiring innovation in a way that is going to benefit all mankind and womankind.
Okay, so not only is it going to benefit mankind, you got to include the ladies here, womankind will benefit as well. Transkind? That goes without saying. Transkind always benefits when Joe Biden's president. So you have to wonder how different things might look if they had people with an IQ of over, say, 85 in positions of authority in the Biden White House. That would be really, really scary. But they don't. They don't at all. And if they had people serving them in the media who were smarter, they could probably get away with this kind of thing. They could convince people it's totally normal to use words like womankind. That would be terrifying if our media, if MSNBC were able to convince you that womankind was a thing. But thank heaven, the media, as annoying as they may be, lack self-awareness to the point that we don't have to worry at all. And to prove it, we have a dispatch from one of Joe Biden's most fervent supporters, someone who will definitely have a position in the coming revolution, and that would be Max Boot. Max Boot of the Washington Post, professional warmonger turned liberal professional warmonger. He just wrote a piece about how the real America is actually the most liberal America. We're just going to quote from the piece and let you assess.